Hey guys, how are you? Yeah, I really wanted to hop on this social media platform really quickly and share a story with you guys. I've with the events that's been going on over the last few days. Of course, you know about this story with Greg Lloyd and Minneapolis Police Department, the murder that was committed right in broad daylight. Um, I wanted to share a story. I think we all, if you're a black man, a black person, or a person of color in America, probably in the world, when you really think about it, this is a global issue, in my opinion. But everyone has a story to tell um, when it comes down to police brutality, specifically in the United States. When you look at institutional racism, systemic injustices that are being committed against people of color and in America is it's reckless, it's concerning, it's a huge issue, and we are in a time where it's an historic and unprecedented time in this country dealing with uh, such issues that we see today. I mean, people are being mobilized from east to west, from north to south. But I wanted to get on here and I want to share my story. I've been looking at social media over the past few days, and I've been encouraged by sharing this story from people who are like me. People from Africa, people from all over the world going, showing themselves on social media, telling their story. So, I wanted to go back to a time where I experienced as a young black man living or coming up in the projects. One of the worst projects that you could imagine. As a young man, that's what I thought anyway. I mean, there was no place in the world like that. It was like a war zone where I came up in Jersey City in the projects. And so I wanted to share, and every day, mind you, every day there was an event with police. We were being brutalized and pulled over and arrested and beat up for absolutely nothing. There are black people who walk around today with records, arrest records that are not legitimate, and I think that's, it's, I can't say that it's unfortunate because when you think about what myself and other persons of color have gone through throughout history, including our ancestors, you think about it today and you think about um, how tough it was back then for our ancestors to deal with what they had to deal with during that time. But so I go back to the early 70s, I mean, the late 70s when I grew up in the projects. And there's this one incident, actually, that kind of both are joined together, where there was a racial incident. And on top of that, there was a police incident that, I can just kind of vividly see. So I'm going back to a time where I lived in the projects back then. We lived in one building, and we lived on the fifth floor in one building. And I can remember a time where I was dating a girl by the name of Tawana. Okay, that's my first girlfriend, my first puppy love. I can remember that. And her dad, Tawana's dad, was a detective in the inner city in the community we came up in. And he did not appreciate the fact that I was dating his daughter. He didn't like me at all. So he comes to the door one day and he knocks on my door. And my father opens the door and he says, I need to speak to your son. My father walks away. The cops grab me out of my apartment and uh, they carry me to the back staircase. Now, if anybody knows about the back staircase in the projects, you know exactly what I'm talking about, the kind of, disgusting place that can be. But anyway, they start wailing on me, start beating me up. Now, her dad was a karate guy. He did something where he studied kung fu or something like that back then. And He's throwing kicks, he's hitting me in my stomach, and he's really crushing me. And there was nothing I can do because I'm hemmed up to the wall. Now, his point was that the point that he wanted to make was that he did not want me to see his daughter. So we decided, his daughter and I, the next day, we decided that we would meet up after school and we would still be together. We would still see each other, but we were going to take an area where black people did not go back then. On West Side Avenue, Jersey City. Back then, it's a lot different today, but back then you did not go to West Side Avenue. You just didn't do it. So we decided in order for us to see each other that day, we would have to, on our way home, we would have to go through that white community. So that, her father drove around in his car, so we did not want him to see us. So she stayed on one side of the street, I stayed on the other, as we walked through this community where we should not have been. So as there was a block that she passed, and I noticed walking toward the block that there were some white guys standing in front of the store. Now they said something to her. They yelled some stuff across the street. I couldn't hear what they said. But we got halfway down the block. I decided to cross the street, and I said to Tawana, I said, "Well, what did they say to you?" And she started telling me some racial slurs and things of that nature. And so I began to hear this sound coming from behind us. And I happened to turn around, and there was an entire community, what looked like an entire community of white people coming at me with bats, shovels, and sticks. And so they were about, I would say, were maybe 100 yards away, but they were moving fast. They were walking fast, heading toward a whole mob of them. And I said to her, "When I tell you to run," I leaned over like this and said, "When I tell you to run, run." And black girls, if anyone, you know how they can be. She was like, "I'm not going anywhere. It's not gonna. I don't care." And I said, "Tawana, when I tell you to run, run." So before you know it, we didn't have a chance to run. Turned around, and there they were. "What are you doing in this community?" Turned out that I ended up hitting the guy that was in front of me. He was the smallest guy there. Now, these guys knew us because for years, my brothers and I and friends would fight with these kids a lot every time we crossed paths. And that happened a lot. And that was part of the reason why we got arrested a lot, because every time we beat them up, they'd come in, we'd get arrested. And there were times we got our behinds kicked. But I remember going across the street, and I got hit by a car, got up. There was nowhere to go because they were everywhere. And I was thrown through a showcase, a car showcase. And I can remember falling, and the bats started hitting me, and that's all I remember. I think I was knocked unconscious by that point. When I did wake up, the ambulance was there, putting me on the bed, and my girlfriend I can remember opening my eyes slightly, seeing my 2 front teeth in her hand. And of course I was busted up all here. I still have those marks there. My whole face was busted, and they took me to the medical center. Now, there was no police at all. Nothing. No one took any statements, none of that stuff. We went to the hospital. My mom was there. My girlfriend was there. My sister was there. My brother was there. He wasn't happy, but that's another story. I'm not even going to go into that. And I sat there, and I remember the doctor telling me, I can put these teeth back in. It was undecided whether or not we were going to put the teeth back in, because he talked about how they would rot and all of this other stuff, and they would eventually have to have them out, which I did. Have them taken out, which I did. And he sent me home. No police, no report, nothing. One black man gets beat up, send him home, send him back to the community. A couple days later, on my way to school, I was picked up by the police department, not far from where I lived. And I had no idea why I was being picked up. And usually what happens is, this wasn't the first time that something like this happened to me, where the police just picked you up and beat you up for no reason and send you home. I'm in the back of the police station, and they come out. They come out of the room, and there's about 3 of them talking. They're joking with each other. And at the same time, they're pulling off their belts and their holsters and their guns. And in their handcuffs, and they're putting them on the table while I'm sitting in the back. I'm sitting there as this young black man saying, "Oh my God!" Now at that point, to be honest with you, I was already used to getting wailed on like that by the police, so I knew what was coming. And of course, that's what they did. They beat me up, put me back in the car, dropped me off on Duncan Avenue where I lived, and told me to go home. Um, so this, when I think about what I was lucky. When I think about what I saw in Minneapolis, and not only that, but other incidents that we've been able to witness over time in the news and over TV stations and things of that nature, we see what happens out there. This is real, people. This is real. It's real for Black Americans who have to go up every day and are subjected to the laws that discriminate against us. And so, and I have to say this too, because when I did get a chance to leave the projects, and I think I had my apartment when I was like 15 years old, trying to find my way to get out of that lifestyle, to get out of that environment. I had no idea what it was like to join forces, to talk to conversate with anyone white. I had no idea what that was like. So I had to learn that. And I learned that through, that's why I love New York, because New York was able to bring me, to bring some clarity to what racial inclusion or social inclusion was all about. Because in New York City was totally different from New Jersey. When I started dancing on the streets of New York, people from everywhere, they didn't care who you were. You were able to get on along with everybody. I mean, we had groups and crews that they called them back then. We had all kinds of kids in our, different cultures in our crews, our dance crews, and so and this is where I learned to get along with people, to get along with people that did not look like me. And so, again, I think that's important when we talk about what we're seeing today. All it takes is a person we're not going to know about each other if we don't talk. Okay? If we don't talk, you can look at me and say, it works both ways. Again, I'm sitting here saying to you that, and not to you, I'm talking in general now, that I had no idea how to connect and socialize with a person from the white culture. I had to learn that. I had to learn how, just like whites have to learn how to get along, how to conversate, how to socialize with blacks, that has to be learned, okay? This is the only way we're going to change in this country. And I'm going to tell you this as well. There's a message out here today. Okay, there's a total dynamic that we're seeing, and I know we've seen these kinds of uprisings before, not to this extent, right? But it's the young people that we're seeing out there in the protests, right? The blacks, the whites, different people of all color that are out there protesting. It is the young people today that are going to lead this country, that are going to lead this nation, that are going to lead this planet into the next 10, 15, 20 years. They're going to make the change. Okay, this is the next generation that's going to do that. Okay, I can assure you that. Yes, you will have pockets of